My name is Tim Oldman, and I'm the CEO and Managing Director of AdAlta. AdAlta is an ASX-listed clinical stage drug discovery and development company. As such, my remarks today are subject to the usual disclosures. Our purpose is to use our unique Eyebody technology, specifically designed to address challenges that traditional antibodies have been unable to address, to create multiple novel therapeutics for debilitating diseases. Why do we need a new approach to such diseases? Well, let's consider idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, one of the lead indications for our lead asset. IPF involves scarring and stiffening of the lungs, which is a progressive and irreversible condition, resulting in restricted lung capacity. It is degenerative and ultimately fatal, in most cases, less than 4 years after diagnosis. There are 2 marketed drugs for IPF, generating $3 billion of sales a year, and yet they don't work particularly well. They slow progression, they do not appear to extend life, and they're accompanied by some very serious side effects. We know many of the biochemical pathways involved in IPF, and several of them involve a class of receptors called G-protein coupled receptors, where antibody therapeutics, despite their impact in many other areas, have been unsuccessful. We believe our Eyebody technology provides significant advantages in addressing these complex receptors and provide new therapeutic options for these debilitating diseases. IPF is particularly important because as a result of COVID, we know that the burden of fibrotic lung disease is likely to be high. Long COVID is becoming an issue, and this may further, unfortunately, extend the size of the market for our lead product. So what do AdAlta have today? Well, our Eyebody platform is the engine room that enables us to create multiple therapeutics in potentially billion-dollar markets. We've generated 2 assets from that platform already today. Our lead asset, AD214, is a clinical stage asset addressing the $3 billion market for IPF, but also for many other fibrotic diseases. And it is in phase 1, where single doses have been demonstrated to be well tolerated. Our second asset is a co-development collaboration with multinational company GE Healthcare. Here we're discovering an Eyebody that can be used to target radio labels for PET imaging that will enable us to improve outcomes in the huge immuno-oncology market. This program is fully funded by GE Healthcare and has generated more than $1 million in revenue to date. With those assets, we have a very clear picture of the way forward, both in the near term and the long term. We have a clear vision for growing our business and building more Eyebody-enabled assets from our platform. We are a 2-product company today and on track to be 5 by the end of 2021 and 10 by the end of 2023. We have some significant milestones ahead for AD214 with further phase 1 data, preclinical data supporting the use of AD214 in multiple indications, and potentially a first partnering window towards the end of this year. We're progressing the Granzyme B asset with GE Healthcare. We expect to add a second co-development collaboration within mid-2021 and the further 2 internal programs that I mentioned. So if I can talk about our Eyebody advantage. Eyebodies on the top panel here are shown on the right. Small molecules on the left are very good at getting into multiple binding sites within the body. Unfortunately, they tend to be non-specific and as a result come with significant side effects, as we've seen with IPF. Antibody therapeutics are large molecules shown in the middle and transformed pharmaceutical outcomes for many diseases by being able to become very, very specific to targets. Unfortunately, they're not very good at getting into deep binding pockets within the membranes, such as the G-protein coupled receptors I mentioned earlier, implicated in fibrotic diseases and many other diseases. So our Eyebodies combine the best of both. They're about 10% the size of a traditional antibody. They carry the specificity with enhanced binding regions to enable penetration into these deep crevices that enable us to address challenges that antibodies have not been able to. And we can formulate them in many different formats, giving us the ability to be direct therapeutics with tunable half-lives. We can also combine them into multi-specific products, and we can use them to direct and target other therapeutic or diagnostic payloads. So turning to our lead asset, AD214, this is a first-in-class treatment for fibrosis. Fibrosis affects many organs in the body, often with debilitating consequences because it destroys the natural tissue architecture and then the function of that organ, whether that's the lung, the kidney, the heart, or the liver, or the eye. The top panel here shows normal human lung tissue, and the right panel shows the destruction of that tissue by the intrusion of scarring and fibrosis. The brown staining shows the amount of CXCR4, which is the target that our drug addresses. And so you can see it's significantly upregulated in this fibrotic disease. The bottom panel shows the effect of AD214, our lead asset, on fibrosis in the lead animal model of this disease. The left panel shows normal mouse lung tissue. The middle panel shows fibrotic lung tissue after it's been induced by a compound called bleomycin. The purple staining represents collagen. This is a marker of fibrosis. And the right panel shows that after treatment with AD214, we're able to retain much more of the natural tissue architecture with much reduced collagen. We're in the middle of our phase 1 clinical program now. This comprises a phase 1 protocol in healthy volunteers. We've completed part A, which was the single dose studies. We're now into part B, where we're starting multiple doses of the drug to determine safety and distribution. We're also planning a phase 1B protocol, and we hope to kick that off in Q3 this year, and potentially including a radio-labeled version of the drug for PET imaging that will enable us to determine where AD214 goes and distributes in the lungs of IPF and ILD patients. So far in our phase 1 trials, we've demonstrated that AD214 has an excellent safety profile. There were no dose-limiting toxicities or adverse events of clinical concern in our single-dose studies. We were able to show that AD214 clearly engages with the CXCR4 receptor, so that we know that we're able to hit that target, at least in the circulating blood cells of our healthy volunteers. And we're able to show that we're able to block those receptors at high levels for extended periods of time. We're able to have 60% of the receptors on circulating white blood cells blocked for up to 3 weeks, and 100% for a week. And this is really important to support extended dosing intervals in patient studies. But importantly, this is about more than just IPF. We have generated and explored preclinical animal models in multiple indications, including eye disease, kidney disease, and cancer is underway. Each of these alone is a multi-billion-dollar indication. All of them are subject to fibrosis, and when fibrosis occurs, in most cases in these diseases, it's irreversible and incredibly debilitating. I mentioned that we expect an initial partnering window to open for this asset towards the end of this year. With phase 1 data in hand and potentially with some of the phase 1B protocol data in hand, we believe this asset could be attractive to multiple multinational pharmaceutical companies. And this slide shows some of the value of assets that have been licensed in recent years in pulmonary fibrosis. And particularly, I'd point you to the top line, which is phase 1 assets showing, for example, the BridgeBio Therapeutic Boehringer Ingelheim transaction with a 45 million euro upfront. Now, obviously, whether we can achieve this or not remains to be seen, whether we even choose to partner at this point, given that phase 2 programs are relatively cheap by phase 2 scales, is also an option for us to progress to phase 2 ourselves. However, we are actively developing a business development pipeline so that we have that exciting strategic choice available to us at the end of the year. If I can turn now to our collaboration with GE Healthcare. Now, the immuno-oncology market is a rapidly expanding game changer for cancer patients. The discovery of immuno-oncology drugs capable of reactivating a patient's own immune system to fight cancer rather than trying to fight cancer directly is transforming outcomes in many cases. And people may remember the fantastic stories for Ron Walker and Jared Ruffhead in the Australian context. This market is expected to be $95 billion by 2026. The problem is that only 20 to 40% of patients actually respond to these immuno-oncology drugs. And so while that small number achieve amazing outcomes, it would be enormously valuable if we could identify those responders much earlier than today, when we can only tell whether they respond or not when their tumor progresses, obviously way too late. GE have identified a target molecule, granzyme B, which is intimately involved in the activation of the immune system to fight cancer. And they came to us with a request to say, could we find an Eyebody that could deliver their radio traces to granzyme B in these immuno-oncology patients so that we could identify responders much earlier. This would enable patients to get onto the right therapy much faster. It will reduce the costs associated with administering drugs that are not working. And as a research tool, it would help developers of new immuno-oncology agents filter their products and fast fail much more readily. The the PET imaging agent market is worth $6.4 billion today, with the lead products generating sales in excess of $400 million. Importantly, these products get to market much more rapidly than a therapeutic. And so despite the potentially lower headline sales, they can potentially generate revenue for a company like AdAlta much faster than a therapeutic like AD214. So what does our collaboration look like? We are co-developing a PET imaging agent against granzyme B, which is a biomarker of immuno-oncology drug response. GE have fully funded the discovery process at AdAlta and have now elected to progress a panel of granzyme B engaging Eyebodies into preclinical and clinical development, and then ultimately commercialization. We've earned $1.4 million of revenue to date in milestones and research fees, and will continue to generate research fees while assisting with preclinical and manufacturing development. We expect further milestones and royalties to be earned on development and commercialization success. And in essence, this is an asset in our pipeline that is at no financial cost to AdAlta. So let's turn to the future beyond these two assets. Excited as we are for both AD214 and the granzyme B collaboration with GE Healthcare, we believe that our platform offers so much more. We plan to build a pipeline of internal assets like AD214 and expect to commence discovery on 2 more of these in 2021. These assets we will develop through discovery to phase 1 or early phase 2 before partnering with large pharmaceutical companies. The second part of our business model involves the co-development of assets with pharmaceutical partners from day one, and the GE collaboration is a good example. And we're on track to add a second collaboration of this type during 2021, in fact, during the middle of 2021. So this pipeline expansion really puts us on track to transition from being a single product company when I joined AdAlta back in late 2019, through a planned expansion phase that we're actively in at the moment, laying the foundations for accelerated growth, and then moving into an acceleration phase in the second half of this year and beyond. What we're aiming to do is something that has been done before. We're repeating what we've done before with AD214 and with granzyme B, but also what many other companies have done before us. And a good example is Ablinks. This was a Belgian company utilizing a similar single domain antibody technology to our Eyebodies, who grew from being a single product in the clinic company in 2007 to 10 years later being acquired by Sanofi for $5 billion US. Now, I won't promise that we're quite on this growth trajectory yet, but this is our benchmark, this is our aspiration, and this is what we're really trying to achieve. So how should you think about the value in AdAlta? Well, most of the analysts that cover us today really value AD214 in one indication, IPF. Now, we believe that AD214 is a key value driver for the company today, but we believe it's more than just the potential in IPF. But in addition to that value, you must think about the value of our external partnerships, today with GE, with another one coming. And then there's the inherent value of the platform and the option value of creating multiple assets over time. And as I mentioned, we expect to have scientists in white coats working on 2 or 3 more programs by the end of this year. And as you can see on the right-hand panel, that can generate significant transactions, both acquisitions and licensing deals, not just for the platform, but also for the products that come off it. So what's coming ahead of us? Well, we've had a great start to the year with orphan drug designation granted for AD214, the results of the phase 1 single dose studies in healthy volunteers being good or even better than expected. We're now into the multi-dose component. We also progressed the GE collaboration into preclinical development, a key milestone in that collaboration. So through the course of the rest of this year, we expect more data through the multi-dose studies, and that's expected by the end of the year, subject to successful development of the PET imaging version of AD214. We expect to commence the phase 1B program in the second half of the year as well. And as I mentioned, that first partnering window opens towards the end of the year. In terms of our other assets, we expect to enter a second collaboration agreement imminently, and we're also expecting to commence the development of 2 new Eyebody-enabled internal pipeline assets by the end of the year. We also continue to invest in the platform itself to improve its productivity and the quality of the Eyebodies that it generates. Our vital statistics are shown on this slide. You can see that our current market capitalisation is in the vicinity of 30 to 40 million Australian dollars. We've generated a 40% return since our last capital raise in August, September last year, and an almost 100% return over the course of the last 12 months. So to summarise, we believe AdAlta is an exciting investment proposition for you to consider adding to your portfolio. We have a platform poised to create value in multiple assets. Our lead asset has opportunities in multiple indications, the first of which is more than $3 billion market today, and this is now in phase 1 clinical trials. Our second asset is a co-development collaboration with GE Healthcare in the high-growth immuno-oncology market, and this essentially is an asset in our pipeline for free. We have a very clear vision for growth that involves repeating what we've already done and following well-tried pathways that other companies have developed, but differentiated by the unique capabilities of our Eyebody platform. We have an experienced drug development team in place with experience across discovery, manufacturing, clinical and commercialization. And we have several near-term growth catalysts for you to look forward to in the next 6 months. Thank you.